Tori Fixes Beck and Jade is the 6th episode of the 4th season of Victorious, and it perfectly encapsulates one of the show's most annoying habits: solving a problem, then immediately unsolving it because the writers got nostalgic for the status quo. Because that's what this episode is. Not a story that needed to exist. Not a natural continuation of character arcs. It's a regression episode, a big flashing sign that says we don't actually want to move forward. First, let's lay down the brass tacks. Beck and Jade's conflict was already resolved earlier in the season. And not just resolved well. Opposite Date gave us a surprisingly mature episode for Jade. She acknowledged that she needs to be more trusting, and that she still cares about Beck, even after breaking up. And part of expressing that was letting him date whoever he wants, even if that person might end up being Tori. Jade learns to let go, and it feels genuine. She doesn't get angry that her ex is hanging out with her rival, or that any potential romance might come of it. It's one of those rare times Victorious actually lets characters grow. So what does Tori Fixes Beck and Jade do? It walks in, looks at that growth, and then Hakkai's it. The episode hinges on the idea that Beck and Jade are broken and that Tori, for the third goddamn time, needs to fix them. And that's already a problem, because nothing about their breakup from season 3 suggested they needed to be shoved back together. They weren't tragically misunderstood soulmates. They weren't victims of bad timing. They were a bad match, and it got to the point where it was ruining other people's lives by way of mere proximity. So when this episode starts acting like their separation is a mistake that must be corrected, it retroactively undermines the emotional intelligence of Opposite Date. It reframes maturity as an error. And then we get to the actual fixing, which is barely anything. Beck and Jade get back together in a way that is rushed, unearned, and emotionally hollow. There's no real conversation, no recognition or outlining of what actually went wrong between them. No sense that either of them has changed in a meaningful way. Jade doesn't confront her jealousy. Beck doesn't establish boundaries or agency. They don't talk through trust, control, or emotional manipulation. They kind of just slide back into place, like the writers checked a box. A subplot of Beck dating Meredith and deciding she's boring isn't enough time to convince us he needs to go back to Jade. Tori doesn't even really contribute to them getting back together. Beck and Jade do it on their own terms anyway, so the title's a fucking lie. And here's the worst part. Nothing is actually resolved. The episode wants credit for closure without doing any of the work closure requires. It's the narrative equivalent of slapping duct tape over a collapsed load-bearing wall and calling it renovation. Which brings us to the most frustrating aspect of this episode. It's a blatant return to the status quo. This is sitcom cowardice at its finest. The show flirted with the idea that relationships can end and stay ended. That growth sometimes means letting go. That characters can evolve past their original dynamics. And then the episode says, nope, fuck you, we're going back to basics. Jade goes back to being Beck's volatile girlfriend. Beck goes back to being her emotionally passive boyfriend. The relationship resumes without any reason to believe it won't implode again in the exact same way. It's not romantic, it's cyclical. And honestly, it's kind of insulting to the audience. It's a brazen admission of how much they didn't care about these characters or their future. Honestly, what would have happened if this show went on for a few more seasons? Are they just gonna have Beck and Jade break up messily and get back together again? Now, credit where it's due, Jade's song is the highlight of the episode, no contest. Liz Gillies absolutely carries this thing. The song is raw, bitter, vulnerable, and emotionally honest in a way that the actual plot refuses to be. It captures Jade's inner turmoil far better than the script ever does. Ironically, the song feels like it belongs in a better episode, one where Jade actually confronts herself instead of being gently nudged back into a relationship she never truly addressed her issues within. The song says more in 2 minutes than the rest of the episode says in 22. And then there's Andre's grandma, who continues her undefeated streak as comedic gold. Honestly, give her more screen time instead. She's earned it. So, what are we left with? An episode that reopens a conflict that was already given a satisfying conclusion, rushes a reconciliation with no emotional payoff, resolves nothing while pretending it resolved everything, and exists solely to restore a familiar dynamic rather than tell a meaningful story. Tori Fixes Beck and Jade doesn't fix anything. It dismantles something. It's an episode that mistakes familiarity for satisfaction and comfort for storytelling, and even tries convincing you that this is the way it should be, as if you're a dumbass who can't think for themselves. And that's why it's so irritating, because Victorious proved earlier in the season that it could do better, and then chose not to. If this episode didn't exist, nothing of value would be lost. Except Jade's song. Everything else, we'd be better off without it. This episode gets a 4 out of 10.